Don't you know, can't you hear? Won't you see Gene here alive and in living color right here on the YouTube with Gene Has Concerns. Expedition Unknown, Black Bart's Lost Pirate Ships. And this was a cool show. This was a quick episode, too. It seemed like it went by really fast. The same amount of time, but it just seemed like it went by fast. And Expedition Unknown may have located not one, but two of the ships connected to the final battle of Black Bart. One of the most successful pirates ever. But here's the thing. Tonight, I have concerns. Did they actually find Black Bart's ships, or did they find other shipwrecks, really cool shipwrecks that may or may not be actually his? So we're going to dive into that a little bit. This is an example of what one of his ships may have looked like. And, you know, as I get deeper into this, you'll understand why I kind of am a little bit torn by what they may have found. I think they said at the end they were 90%, but anyway, let's get on to that. Let's go ahead and talk about Black Bart first. He was Bartholomew Roberts, a Welsh sailor turned pirate. And he operated during the closing years of the golden age of piracy. And he captured hundreds of vessels, far more than many of the other pirates out there. And his success apparently came from organization, discipline, and aggressive tactics, not mere wild behavior. So he seemed like he might have been a little bit of a businessman doing this. And he developed a fearsome reputation, but popular accounts also contain exaggerations and legends, which we know all of that's out there. So, and his flagship was the Royal Fortune, a name Roberts reportedly reused on several of his ships. And companionship that they think they may have found might be one of the Rangers. So, and you know, Black Bart makes a good television subject because he represents a pirate contradiction. Incredibly successful, exceptionally dangerous, historically important, and yet still surrounded by incomplete and sometimes conflicting records. And then, you know, some versions of Roberts' pirate code prohibit excessive gambling, require weapons to remain ready, and establish compensation for injuries. So that was pretty cool. Like I said, a little bit of a businessman. However, surviving accounts were often published by people outside the pirate crew, so viewers should be cautioned when they watch this episode of what really might be real and what might be a little bit of colorful, you know, nuances, if you will, in the story. But its last battle, you know, Robert's final confrontation occurred off the coast of West Africa, February of 1722. HMS Swallow, commanded by Challoner Ogle, odd first name, engaged Robert's forces, and Robert apparently attempted to sail past the warships and escape rather than fight an extended, prolonged battle. And he was struck by a projectile during the engagement, and he was killed. And his crew reportedly honored his request that his body not be captured, wrapping it and throwing it overboard. So that was something I guess some pirates and other sailors wanted, is they didn't want to be captured and buried or shown off or anything like that. Just go ahead and dump my body in the sea and let the fishies have me, so to speak. So, and because his body's lost at sea, there's no grave and no recovered body for independent confirmation on, you know, who he was, and doing DNA ancestral stuff, if he had ever had kids or anything like that, you know. And it just became a symbolic blow to the golden age of piracy. And that's per the Royal Museum of Greenwich. So, and the reenactment provides a strong dramatic ending, but the historical record does not preserve the event like a modern forensic report. So, basic account as well it's well established, but some precise visual details aren't there, basically. So, and during the reenactment, they show Roberts being struck in the neck and upper body by this projectile. And we're going to get into that a little bit later, like I said. but the projectile ended the career of one of the history's most successful pirates instantly. So now this ammunition, it was like a giant shotgun, and I'll show you a picture of what the reenactment showed. But what it might have been is it sounds consistent with what's called a grapeshot. And grapeshot was not normally one solid cannonball that exploded into bullets. It consisted of multiple iron balls bundled together around a central spindle and arranged in a fabric bag. So when fired, the bundle is separated and the balls spread out, shells like a shotgun. So, and that's pretty cool. That's pretty wild that they come up with that back then. So, and we can go into Grapeshot versus a canister shot. Is a smaller number of comparatively large iron balls, traditionally arranged somewhat like a cluster of grapes. And the canister shot, many smaller projectiles packed inside a thin canister or container that broke apart after firing. So, canister is an ammunition that most closely resembles the erroneous shotgun shell. In a naval battle of this period, however, Roberts' death is traditionally attributed to a grape shot. So, and when the show describes this, I picture a cannonball filled with pellets, but as we see here in this picture, what it might actually have been is this, roped up bag of iron projectiles inside this larger projectile and being shot. So, and that's like I said, for the time, that's pretty cool, actually. So then we get into the shipwreck searches. And, the team searches near the recorded location associated with Robert's final battle. And actually, that's a little bit of a mistake there. I'm sorry that was written like that, because the final battle was off the coast of Africa, and this is in Jamaica. So this is where they're actually believing, because the captain that took over the ships brought them back to Jamaica. And we really don't know what exactly happened to all the treasure, if there was a lot of treasure found on these ships. He did turn in some things to the government, but we don't know exactly what he did with all of it, because there's no one really there supervising him and the loot, so to speak. So, but, they identify wreck material where historical evidence suggests vessels from the encounter could have gone down. And this was down during a hurricane came through and really did some damage there and such, and sunk the ships. And there's a lot of, objects that you can determine whether it's a shipwreck, the ballast, wooden planking, ammunition and mortar related objects, cannons, things like that, and other debris can be found down when they're diving for these wrecks. And discovery becomes more compelling when a second wreck site is located nearby, and they're using the sonar and some other device. I didn't catch the name of it, but it's measuring something else that can determine that there might be something down there. And of course, these ballasts are just rocks, and they load the bottom of the ship with these rocks to help keep the ship, afloat and balanced and everything. But it's not, it helps get it in the water up to a certain depth, but it's not sinking, and it's not toppling over or anything like that. So, and these are two attractive sites for them to dive. And, it's compelling, but old-time maritime routes, storms, warfare, navigation accidents, etc. It could be any number of ships, actually, that we don't know if it's quite their ships. So now here's an image of, it's not a clear image, it's very murky, but here's an image of some of the ballast that they found down there and other materials that lets them know that, yeah, this is probably a sunken ship, because when it sinks and all the wood kind of rots and falls away because it's, in the salt water for, 300 years or more. And, the stones are just left in the area of the ship. And sometimes they can even determine the direction of the ship, which was the bow and which was the stern, just by the way these, rocks are arranged a little bit and by other materials that may be around. So um, then we get into some of the best evidence for identification is geographic proximity. The wrecks lie near the historical location associated with the battle. They find, I don't remember, it was a map. Yeah, it was a map. And the map where one of the ships lies, one of the wrecks lies, has a P. And this is quite a few 100-year-old map. Has a P. And then on the legend on the side, the P stood for one of the ships. So that's how they kind of think that might be really the ship that went down in a hurricane. And the orientation, the position of the ship, that's how it's pointing towards land. And if the ship they dive on is also pointing towards land, that's another indication. And there's two separate wrecks down there, and trying to get the dimensions and the layout and the timber measurements and such, and period compatible artifacts that they can find, which they did find a lot of that. And the two wrecks are very interesting in the general area, so they kind of match what they had seen on the map. And the construction, the dimensions, and the artifacts appear to be with that period of time. So that's a good thing. Some circumstantial case, two plausible wrecks align, with these ships. And still missing is a diagnostic artifact that directly names, directly names or uniquely identifies the ships. And I wonder, and they didn't mention it, but I wonder if these ships actually had bells. I know a lot of ships had bells on it, and sometime engraved on those bells were the writing. So if they could find one of those bells down there, if these ships did have that and had their name engraved on it, then that would be definitely beyond, circumstantial evidence. It would be pure evidence. So, but you will see here the map and the layout of what this mapper, I forgot what they're called, their names. Someone in the comments, please comment the name of the people that do these maps, including back then, but we see that this is the preferred choice, by using the measurements, stuff like that. They're able to go down and dive on that. And, what they did not find, it was the missing proof, like I said, a ship's bell bearing the name. I just said that. An inscription, clear identifiable personal possessions belonging to Roberts, which that might be kind of hard to find. Documentation recovered from a wreck. I don't think you'd be able to find any readable documentation, but who knows? Unique structure feature, stuff like that. And do I think they found two genuine historic wrecks? Yes. Do the location, construction, and circumstances make them legitimate candidates for Black Bart ships? Absolutely. But did they find proof beyond a reasonable doubt? No. They did not find proof of that the ships were the Royal Fortune and the Ranger. So, but this is a core to what I want to do with Gene Has Concerns is, kind of talk about these things to pinpoint some things some holes in their story or holes in the evidence or stuff like that. And the one guy said they were 90% sure this was it, but we're going by someone else's map that said that ship was the Royal Fortune. So that's what we got to go by. Now, I had estimated back in the Hell Ships episode 2 that it's about a 6-month turnaround from when they record to when the shows are airing, because that was back in January and it aired in July. So I'm thinking about the same thing. So did some research, and kind of went back to see if there's anything after production. Really didn't find much of anything there, but I hope there's more stuff that comes out. I hope maybe they can dive again and actually find a bell or find something else that definitively says, yes, these are, at least this is this ship and that is that ship. So, but, that absence matters, so they can't just definitely go into it. And as to this recording, I couldn't find any later public announcements or anything in that regard. But I did want to share with you a little bit of the final visual and closing thoughts here. Is, as you can see here, this was let's see here, the photogrammetry. There it is. Couldn't remember the word. Where they're taking thousands of pictures and then the computer melts them all together. And then this is a layout of what the ship may look like in that all that debris there. And that's why when they measure things, they believe that this very well could be that ship because it fits the same dimensions of a ship at that time. So, and this kind of lets the audience see the complete archaeological picture as I'm looking at it. Could it be the ship? Yes. Am I 90% sure? I'm not sold 90%. But this expedition may have brought us closer to Black Bart's final moments than anyone has been in 300 years. 2 wrecks in the right area with evidence that appears to fit the period. That is an impressive discovery. But until someone finds an identifying artifact, produces stronger dating evidence, then it remains a candidate. These are just shipwrecks, but not really identified yet. So the ships may be there. The proof just hasn't caught up to the story yet. So, and that's it. That's the way I see that. And I hope you enjoyed what I talked about. And if I find any more information, I'll definitely do additional videos about this and, share them on YouTube and do some reels and stuff like that. But in the meantime, everybody have a great week. Tune in because Kitchen Nightmares is coming out real soon. I'm also going to watch all of the new Unreal from WWE and kind of give some insights on that. And we'll see what else comes up. And there's a big surprise coming out soon too, that I'm going to be doing something weekly that I think everybody will enjoy. But until then, always remember, Gene has concerns.